engage shoppers to do the right thing with recycling. Yeah, tricky. Basically, you make them do it.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, yes, but sometimes you can be surprised because sometimes it really takes just a step to change consumers' attitude and so on. It's a bit like you remember when it was still allowed to smoke in planes.
Of course.
Then one day they said, no, this is not allowed anymore. And it became a taboo immediately.
I agree, but
And
that's
with
required.
plastic bags, yeah, it requires a switch.
Yes.
But then sometimes it's surprising to see how people adapt and adopt totally different behaviors.
Just feel free.
Like when I was a kid, it's still allowed.
Can we get him on screen?
And now, I mean, it's unthinkable now.
Absolutely, it's
And
socially
let's
unacceptable.
do something like that. Yeah, I know. There's still a lot of that.
Am I sitting here? Okay.
Wherever you like. Nice to meet you. I'm the moderator. I'm Veronica.
Hello there.
Nice to meet you.
Sorry.
That's all right. No, that's fine.
Sit over here then. Okay.
We're not in order. There's no password as of right. Can I announce?
And I want to do some audience interaction.
But I think in terms of
And I want to wait.
We'll begin shortly. Is Kun Paradon here? Yes.
Does it matter? You're going to speak English anyway. Oh, I know, but we have mail and
Colleagues at the back, may we please ask you to take your seats?
all this are coming from lunch. They're coming slowly. Yes, Richard.
Thank you all for joining us after that lunch. I hope everyone's well fed and well rested before we get into this afternoon's exciting discussions. The next session is going to be I Want to Live Forever. Solutions to close the loop for packaging, recycling, and e-commerce. I'm going to hand it over to Veronica Pedrosa.
Thank you very much indeed. Welcome back from lunch, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. This is the most challenging session, I feel, because it's immediately after lunch. We all know how the blood sugar dips, and it's a bit of a struggle. So I hope you've had some coffee and that you're ready to be stimulated. If not, you're ready to be stimulated by the conversation that we're going to have here. You know, the session is I Want to Live Forever, Solutions to Close the Loop for Packaging, Recycling, and E-Commerce. And, you know, actually I was reminded of the conversation that was had a couple of days ago. I think, Richard, you were on that panel when Helmut Schmitz, Head of Public Affairs of Der Grüne Punkt, said plastic is a fantastic material, but it has a dark side, and we need to fight the dark side together. Because as a packaging material, it's revolutionized the way we produce, distribute, and consume goods and services, and it's increased products' shelf life, offers ease of transport, and the packaging industry accounts for 36%, more or less, of global plastic consumption. But most packaging is for single use. We're going to hear from our participants from their various perspectives. And as I say, this forum, the point of it is to find solutions. There's a sea of solutions. So while we will discuss challenges as we have been over the last few days, I also want to be thinking quite positively about kind of key messages and recommendations, solutions that we can talk about. I thought it might be best, you can see everybody's affiliations from the slide as a reminder, but just so that you know, hang on, I'll do this. I'll work left to right. Next to me, Paradon Julajata is chairman of the Plastic Industry Club, and he'll tell us more about what that is in just a moment. Suksiri Chamsuk is with UNIDO, and she is a program officer who's been working on energy, climate, and chemical management for over 15 years. So she's been conceptualizing and formulating projects for some Asian countries, and you can tell us more about that later. Here we are. Let me get the next bio. Ibu Lakshmi Dewanti is a senior advisor for the Ministry of Environment and Forestry for the Republic of Indonesia, and she's going to tell us about her 25 years of experience in the field of environment and sustainable development and how that's affected looking at plastic pollution, which is now, you know, the topic that we're dealing with. Richard Jones, you may have seen a couple of days ago as Senior Vice President of Indorama Ventures, was on a different panel. So glad to have you here. We'll also be talking to Giuseppe Bussini, just a moment, who is the Deputy Head of Mission for the European Union. European Union is Thailand's third trading partner and third source of foreign direct investment, and they're also partners in issues such as promotion of sustainable development goals. And actually, we were just talking about the synergies that between ASEAN and the EU over lunch. And finally, Mark Fletcher is Insights Manager of Power Retail, where he prepares deep insight shopper and industry reports to help online retailers make better business decisions. And he'll be commenting on plastic pollution from that perspective. But I thought we should begin really with Ibu Lakshmi. If I could ask you, how can governments collaborate, bringing the life cycle approach to the plastic value chain? Do you have a particular perspective from your experience in Indonesian government?
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's indeed my honor to participate in this forum. Yes, before sharing you what Indonesians doing, I just would like to underline how important to work together. Because when we're talking about solutions, indeed we cannot work alone. We need other colleagues, other partners to work together. So I would like to add another keyword in this topic. It's working together. Solution and working together. It's indeed important. This issue has been years at the global levels, yeah. And at the global level, there's also some effort, attempts to solve the solution, or we are using here to close, the loop. And let me underline the important resolution of the fourth UNEA sessions back in the beginning of this year. Yeah, because it's very important to everybody of us to also refer to that resolution. We have the resolution on addressing environmental challenges through sustainable business practice. We have a solution on sustainable consumption and productions. We have solution on marine plastic litter and microplastics. We also have the resolution on environmentally sound management of waste. So at the global, we have that effort, very good effort. In the regional, we have the Bangkok Declaration, for example, on combating the marine debris in oceans. And at the national, Indonesia has been put this agenda at one of the top priorities on our environmental agenda. Of course, agenda on forests and biodiversity is still our priority, but chemical, including the plastic waste, is become another important priorities in Indonesia. We've been trying many years because in Indonesia, the authority for managing the solid waste has been decentralized to district and cities. So then we have different roles when in terms of the solutions. At the central, I'm working at the central levels. we encourage, we set the legal basis, the regulations. We set the national strategic roadmap action plan for managing the solid waste, including the reduce, reuse, and recycles. And the provinces and the locals, district and cities, has also been implementing or putting this issue into their own regulation at the locals. So that's important. Having the regulation in place is important. And another important efforts in Indonesia, because we believe that community empower is very important for Indonesia. And it has been a backbone of our protection and management agenda, of environment agenda in Indonesia. So in dealing with this plastic waste, of course I also would like to underline, we are not against plastic. We are against plastic waste and the single use of plastic. At community, we've been able to raise the awareness.
Right.
Through the school campaign, we have the green school programs. We also have the women empowerment groups. And at the community levels, I'm proud to inform you that we've been setting up more than 1,000 of waste bank, local waste bank. It's a local recycling facilities.
Have you been able to see any tangible results?
Yes, because we set a very tangible result under on our regulations. We would like to manage at 50% of our solid waste, and we would like to recycle at a certain percentage of our waste. It's very ambitious, though, but we simply have no choice rather than put the target at the ambitious levels. And the waste bank has been very effective in raising awareness, especially community now realize that if they treat their waste carefully or in better way, then there will be an economic value on it. That's important because people always ask, what's in it for me? When we ask them to be part of the solution or to be part of the programs, what's in it for me? And we just not only mention that it's good for your environment, it's good for your river, but it's also good for your economic. So the waste bank practices and experiences in Indonesia has been a very wonderful experience. In numbers of cities, for example, Surabaya, and I think one of the speakers has also mentioned this, we have a very good recycle facilities, the waste bank, or bank sampah we call it, and people can throw or can bring their waste and then they will put economically, in fact they have a book, like a bank account. So they put it, and some of waste bank is already linked with the local banks. It's a real local banks, and they can get the cash right away, or they can just.
So there's a cash incentive.
There's a cash incentive for the community
for disposing
for
of
yes,
waste
yeah,
properly.
Yes, and in Surabaya, for example, you can pay your transport, local transport by giving up your plastic bottles. So that's kind of example. As much as we would like to address as much as we would like to address the issue through the community level, we need to bring other stakeholders, namely the private sector, the businesses, the academy, activists, and local government. So we have a different type of programs to make sure that they are part of the solutions. And now after introducing the waste bank, now we kind of step back a bit, because it's important to reduce your waste first before recycle.
Okay.
Or before you reuse it.
There are so many people. You have a huge population in Indonesia.
That's why, because
Can
we
this
have a
be-
huge
yes.
population, we need to reduce or to lower our per capita, so waste per capita. So reduce is important. only a month ago, we introduced another regulations on sortations at the household.
Okay.
Because most of the waste, solid waste in Indonesia has just mixed everything. They put everything in one.
It's not sorted.
Yeah. So after reduce, now they sortage.
Okay.
So having that, then it's become more easy for the other levels.
Thank you very much. We'll hear more about Indonesia later, but I wonder if I could go to Kun Paradon actually, because I wanted to find out about the perspective of, it says there, the Federation of Thai Industries, but it's a plastic industry club. What is that?
Okay, thank you very much. I try to finish what we have done for 1.5 years in 6-7 minutes. Okay, first we as a plastic industry, we admit that due to the popularity of the plastic material, especially in the single-use plastics, now has created a lot of problems. And in the past, everyone talking about produce, use, sell, right? And everyone blame that the management of waste is government job. So I think we come to the same conclusion that this is part of the industry responsibilities. And it's not that easy, but what we try to convince all the petrochemical industry, plastic industry, that in order to solve the marine debris problem, plastic issue problem, and sustainable business development also, I think we have to act more aggressively. So this is part of the belief. What we have done successfully since June 5th, we formed public-private partnership with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, Interior Ministry, Bangkok Metropolitan Administration, and other NGO as well as the leading petrochemical industry and converters, and Central Department, Siam Pivat Group, and for the first 15 organizations last year. So what we start on the public-private partnership was we set up that the way to solve the plastic issue, we start from 3R. We agree that reducing of single-use plastic is important, is critical. And it's my job to tell the industry or the converters that they have to adapt. This will affect their business. They have to admit that it's a trend on the world. However, from the 3R, reduce, reuse, recycle, we would like to bring the circular economy model into the plastic industry so that plastic, we look at the material, not just the plastic, and can we get it back to the recycle scheme? And if we use it wisely, it can help in terms of environmental as well. And the most important thing is how can we build to make the consumer to be the responsible consumers.
I want to ask you a question before, because I wondered whether it was a nice job. You're having to talk to the producers and tell them to stop using their single-use plastics. Do you enjoy it? Or is it hard?
No, actually, I think the first example we did 2.5 years ago, we brought the T-shirt bag manufacturer, single-use manufacturer, come. 80% of the producer in Thailand, we have the open letter to the finance ministry. Let's collect 2 baht if the consumer use it at the point of sale. We offer, because we think that we cannot avoid finally the ban of the plastic. But when we go to Germany in supermarket, if we have to use a plastic bag, we have to pay it, we have to think it, we have to think before we use, at least to create demand supply. And then the industry has time to adapt. But due to the law and regulation, it's not that easy to issue any law to collect the money. And because we also request that any money that collect need to be come back to promote the circular economies, educate people, helping to build infrastructure in terms of recycle. But in terms of regulation, it's not that easy. So this is part of our job. So anyway, come to this. When we talk about the circular economies, due to the limited of time and also a lot of help from the government side, our partners, we create about 2 or 3 models. Model in Rayong, which is we are very proud of, Even the minister already mentioned this morning that during the Spouse Asian Summit, right, we showed the remote, which we have done in Rayong. And in Bangkok, in Krong Tay district, we did finish already 2 versions of material flow database done by Chulalongkorn University to understand where the plastic waste come from and how much go to the ocean. So at least the first year very fast, and the second year we got funding from Pollution Control Department. The first year done by private sector, but the second year followed by Pollution Control Department. So this is already public-private partnership because it's the same study, make it better, more sampling size, and the data is more accurate, better than the first year. So that's part of the material flow database. I'm just talking about and then all the roadmap that you have seen from the government, 7 types of plastic, ban 3 types of plastic. That is, we have worked with the government, come up with this kind of roadmap. And right now, because of, we would like to bring plastic back into circular economies. So our team right now, about 20 of people from resin manufacturer, recycler, converters, brand owners, and also Indorama as well. We are working a circular economy model as an action plan, how to achieve roadmap in 10 years. We need action plan, and that action plan we will present to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental as well. And I would like just to mention the model in Rayong, just in quick, why we choose Rayong. I think in Thailand we have more than 76, 77 provinces, right? In yesterday you might see Mae Pha Luang and another municipal talking about what they have done very good job in the north. But we have to admit that to implement circular economy or to reduce the plastic waste into the environment, we have to look into any municipals or provinces that the local administration very strong, very committed, and they want to do it, right? To help it.
So you want to start in places
Yeah.
where there's a natural.
As a criteria is
Yeah.
meet.
Yeah.
Because if we go to the place that local administration doesn't want to do it, the head of the village doesn't like to do it, why we go it?
point, yeah.
What's the point? So in Rayong, December last year, we signed with 18 municipal from 66 municipal and also Rayong province to the circular economies and how that we come and teach people from how to segregate plastic waste. We build up the social enterprise, small low-income family to do the business in segregate plastic waste, collecting waste and sell to and then we connect the dot to the recycler. So one of the family used to have 10,000 baht a month. Right now they can earn 100,000 baht a month of selling plastic waste. And there is one community called Wangwa. This Wangwa community, they generate 6,000 kilograms of household waste. But they already manage internally from the organic waste to plastic waste to other waste, and they have only 60 kilograms of waste sent to waste management. So another story that why we choose Rayong, because Rayong have the best waste management infrastructure in the country. So they have like a machine from Norway, I think, 10 million euro machine to process all the waste, to segregate from organic waste to the RDF. So they have the compostable to the biogas. So they have a 1 megawatt biogas plant. They have a 9.8 megawatt RDF to make electrical plants. They have a sanitary landfill on the back, 8 side. So they have a capacity of about 500 tons a month for the solid waste management. But right now there are 1,000 tons of solid waste go to their plant. So they have to put into the landfill. So if we can manage 80 municipal, up to 66 municipal, reduce the waste, total waste go to the waste management below their capacity. It means in the next 5 years, we plan that no plastic going to go to the landfill. So we connect the dot, we build a business, we build a recycle company, we build a small community, like one community, one village, one segregation or sorter business. So this kind of model that we are doing right now is we are quite proud of, and we invite everyone here, if you would like to go, you can contact us, our team, on the PPP plastic, that we think this is part of the model that if everyone doing from the we agree to reduce some of the single use because it's too much. But when we use its responsibilities. And then plastic can be recycled. The big problem in Thailand is organic waste. More than 50 to 56% is organic waste that need packaging. So this kind of thing has been done slowly, and we hope that in the next 4 years, all the 66 municipal we will cover the whole and can manage Rayong as the best model in Thailand. So this is part of the thing that we believe that if we do it right, it's no plastic go to the landfill or go to recycle or energy. It means no plastic in the ocean. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can I, any hands up? Is anyone interested to go to Rayong to go and find out about this model? Right. Partnerships. Okay. I'm really glad to see that. Maybe you can approach Comparadon a bit later. I actually wanted to turn to Richard Jones now and ask you, because you're involved with sustainable recycling based on the circular economy concept, what your assessment is of the kind of work that Paradon's doing here in Thailand. Yeah.
Yes, I work with Paradon, so
Yes.
we're involved. We're involved with many organizations.
Yes.
It's not just one. There's a lot of organizations. And I think one of the misnomers that I hear today is it's the responsibility of plastic companies, which is not quite correct. It's maybe a civil duty, yes, for us to help. We're not responsible. I keep hearing this. And I think what we're missing today is a deeper understanding. I mean, if I were to ask people, could you name 5 brands of car? Can you name 5 brands of car? Everyone? I'm safe, yeah. Name 5 types, of plastic. Can you name 5 types of plastic? Some people can. Great, but not the majority. So the problem is we think that plastic is one object. And when people talk about single-use plastic, when I ask somebody, what's a single-use plastic? They say straws. No, straw is an object, it's not a plastic, sorry. You've got to name the plastic. So most of the people don't even know that most plastics, not just the one that my company makes, can actually be recycled. And there's companies in Thailand that can even recycle PVC, which is notoriously difficult. So then the question usually comes up, well, who's to blame? And now I would really like to do some audience participation because we'll get to the point here. Does everyone know that Thailand has one of the biggest accident death rates in the whole world? Everyone knows this, yeah? Okay. And obviously, these things happen on roads. Put your hand up if you think the road is to blame for the deaths. Everybody? So, we know it's not the pathway, so we can pretty much discount rivers, you see, for plastic. Sheet steel companies like ArcelorMittal and others, does everyone believe that sheet steel companies are responsible for car accidents? Put your hand up if you think they are, because that's the equivalent of a plastic company. Sorry. Do you think the car is responsible for deaths? Put your hand up. Because that's the drinks companies and the packaging companies. There's one here. Cars are responsible. Does anyone think that people are responsible for crashing? Does anyone think that people are responsible? Right. So what you see then is a train of logical thought that, it's not the path, it's not the logistics, it's not anything. It all comes down, and it's not the packaging. The packaging is the steel, basically, and you use it or abuse it as you wish. So what I think is missing from the loop today is knowledge. I really believe that with knowledge, we can solve this problem. But if I see NGOs doing this and doing that, and it's higgledy-piggledy everywhere, I think, well, why can't everyone join in one group? Why have we got to have thousands of groups, thousands of NGOs? I know it's because a lot of young people today are very enthusiastic to play a role in this. But I think the role should be more circular, and that people should join together and not have thousands of these NGOs all dealing with the same issues in different parts of the world. But there should be some sort of linkage between, it could be the UN, but if you don't look at it as a holistic problem where we don't break it all down into small factions all the time, but we look at it as a whole problem. I get asked now and again, can we donate money to one of these sides or another? And sometimes we do, but when somebody says it's a lot of money, I get a bit worried, because I don't really want to pay for somebody to sit in an office. So we decided we're going to pay to do something practical.
When
So
you say we, you mean Indorama?
oh,
You
yes,
mean-
yes, yeah. So we're putting $1.5 billion into buying and building and expanding our recycling plants. Because we think that what the world needs to know is that if you recycle, then a lot of this problem goes away, like raw material. Raw materials, plastic is about, let's think, 14% of the use of crude oil today, 14%. Over 50% is gasoline. But there's a trade-off, because with plastic, you make your aeroplanes lighter, you make your trains lighter, cars lighter, trucks lighter, and you save gasoline. So, you know, when people talk about single-use plastic, I'm very interested to know, which plastic are you talking about? Straws are made from polypropylene, which is easily recycled. We just don't do it. And I find that without this basic understanding of what we are trying to do at a very essential level is trying to lower plastic waste. My boss often says something funny. He says, plastic doesn't have legs. It doesn't walk into the ocean. Yeah? It doesn't walk into the rivers. Somebody puts it there. So what we have to do is expand education at young ages, 6 years upwards, so that as they grow up, it's in their DNA. I'm guessing we're the only company in Thailand with a project that's destined to last for 30 years. We have a 30-year project.
Okay.
We teach kids, young kids, about plastic and recycling and how to separate the plastic. And we guess that in 30 years' time, they'll be middle-aged. There'll be prime ministers, ministers, there'll be teachers, there'll be people in a position to teach others. Because you've got nearly 70 million people in Thailand and billions around the world. You aren't going to fix this problem in 10 years, as I keep reading in the newspaper. It isn't going to happen. There has to be a concerted effort over a very long time with investment. So it could be, governments don't build recycling plants, and I often wonder why. They don't build them. It's strange, isn't it? You think that they'd be keen, they make dumps. You know, throw all your trash on that dump. But they don't actually get involved in the recycling. So I'm very surprised sometimes when people say, should we invest in this and that? Invest in recycling, invest in education. Because then the circular economy would be complete. People will know what they have to do.
No government gets into recycling?
I've never heard of one.
None?
Have you? No?
No.
Never heard of one. I mean, there's drinks companies like Coke that are getting involved in recycling, and we have a joint partnership with them in the Philippines. But that was quite exceptional, I think, really, and they're starting to think more about doing that, and I totally agree with it. But your gap is the gap in knowledge. If people don't dispose of their litter properly and separate it, now there's ways you can do this. You can use a deposit scheme on drinks bottles, and it worked for glass bottles, beer bottles. Why not for plastic? And I think it works in many countries. It works when Thailand is unusual because you think that there's a lot of plastic waste, but about 82% of plastic bottles are collected in Thailand.
Yes.
I'm not sure that they don't all come to us. There's other recyclers as well. So once you put a value on a bottle, for certain income levels, it becomes much more attractive, as we heard.
Yep.
We did an experiment once. We sold eggs, chicken eggs, 2 bottles for 1 egg. We sold out within an hour. It was fantastic. People, when they saw they can get something, that plastic bottles are like cash, and you have the transportation thing that was mentioned earlier as well. So these things are doable, but when I hear so many people with diverse ideas, I'm thinking, well, come together, join together, and put everyone in the same project, rather than so many projects. To me, it makes a lot of sense.
Right. I'm going to just pause for a moment because we have a video that might help to frame our discussion as we've spoken to 3 of our 6 panelists. Just a pause before we speak to the others, if you'll bear with me. Thanks very much indeed. Really great video made there by C Circular, I believe. Who would like to go next? Would you be willing to, Suksiri, if we could talk about industrial development across the region and the trends that may or may not work towards closing the loop?
Right. Thank you for having us, UNIDO, at this very important event. Well, talking about
Should we explain what UNIDO is as well? It's a United Nations agency.
United Nations Industrial Development Organization. We focusing on working with member states to help them in terms of the income generations, as well as trade capacity building and energy and environment, which is greening parts of the industrial development. Okay. So that's in short. Now, talking about the trends, right? Well, I would think that any trend would go against our efforts in reducing plastic waste and the use of plastic if it is a business as usual. So that's my personal view, regardless of any trend. Okay. Right? Just to focus on industrial development trends in this region, we just launched UNIDO Industrial Development Report 2020. And that report's talking about Industrial Revolution 4.0, so which is IR 4.0 in short. So this IR 4 meaning that is a digitalization of everything, name it be production or society or business, the e-business. The e-commerce is part of this digitalization age of industrial development, yes. Right? So now, how could we enhance this digitalization to our benefit in efforts in reducing plastic waste or reducing the use of plastic, since we're talking about reduction of the use to begin with, right? Mm-hmm. So let me just offer some concrete example of how this IR 4.0 going to be helpful for us in terms of beating this plastic pollution. Let me just, So first of all is the digitalization of volume-based collection system of waste management. And this already happening in very smart city like Seoul.
Okay.
The other one can also be operational online platform on, to connect waste generators and local collectors. And this, we already have some startups happening in connecting these dots. And Kun Paradon also mentioned this type of connecting the dots. So we also can do by physical networking, but we also can do it by application as well. So that's the digitalization of this connection. And then also we can use this, this one is very interesting, image scanning that can scan, that perform the waste segregation. So these two already happening in China. So these two help you in more effective waste segregation at source.
So you can scan an object to find out what the material is and sort it properly.
Right. So that's go with the whole thing. So you have scanner and then you have the bins that would go with it. And these two already available and in use in China already. That's one. And I would just jump to probably also this digital age would be able to help us finding new materials that probably probably just a plastic with just one polymer that would do. Because what we heard now is the difficulties and complexity of recycling some plastics because of they have more than one polymers. Mm-hmm. And this knowledge is not ingrained in many of the population. So basically, if we have this new technology, would be able to help us advance kind of polymers in the plastic. That also my hope. And also biotechnologies. The IR 4.0 would be able to help us advancing this biotechnology, probably soon to replace plastic. But again, as our colleague also just mentioned, we have to specify which type of plastic. Should I stop here for now for the trend?
If you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
So we can just move on and then we can open to the floor and people might have questions. And sure. Especially because it might wake them up because it's 2 o'clock and you know it's after lunch and all of these kind of things. Mark, did you want to pick up, does that sound like, I know that you work in consumer trends, consumer behaviors, and I think everybody's spoken about the need for consumer behavior to change and education. What do you think the pickup is going to be like, and how do you make people buy in?
Hi everyone, and just to correct, shop science up there is not my major role. It's working for a research organisation called Power Retail that specialises on e-commerce. My role on the panel today, I think, is to be the bearer of bad news. And thank you. And that bad news, having spent over 30 years getting paid to try and make people buy more things or to change their shopping behaviour, that bad news is education alone does not change consumer behaviour. People can know what the right thing to do is, but to get them to do the right thing when they're faced with spending their own money is very, very hard. I'd like to give a very quick case study. I come from Melbourne, from Australia. You'll probably hear that in my accent. And we recently spoke to over 8,000 Australians, and 48% of them claimed they know a lot or a great deal about the impact of plastic on our oceans and the negative effects of that. So almost half claimed to know a lot or a great deal, and only 2% said they didn't know anything about it. So this is an educated population. Well, 18 months ago, through government pressure, the major supermarkets, who account for 75% of sales, they banned plastic bags, single-use plastic bags, And then they changed to, so it costs about 15 cents, 3 baht, I believe, to buy a plastic bag in a supermarket. What we have now is a situation where 96% of Australian shoppers take plastic bags with them. And if you stand in the shopping centres, as I do, that's part of my work, and watch what people do, when they get to a checkout, if they haven't got enough bags or if they didn't bring any bags, they actually apologise to the person who's serving them. They apologise. They feel socially embarrassed because they haven't brought their own bags. That changes their behaviour. It's not about, they could easily spend the 3 baht, the 15 cents to buy more bags, but what forces them to bring the bags there every day is the embarrassment or the potential for embarrassment of being seen to do the wrong thing. So that's great in supermarkets, and you would expect, so almost half of them know about it, 94% are doing the right thing in supermarket. Let's talk about fashion. Sadly, only 34% of Australians take bags with them when they go to buy fashion. So there's complete difference in the behaviour. They know what the right thing is to do, they don't do it. So there's a problem here. Education alone will not change their behaviour. I'd like to switch very quickly to e-commerce. The problem in e-commerce, obviously the plastic waste problem, is primarily around the packaging that goes with the item that's distributed. So here I'm not talking about, I'm not talking about when you order takeaway food and it's delivered. That's not in e-commerce as I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you order something off Amazon or Alibaba or what's the local platform here? Lazada, right. And it's delivered to you. Okay, so there we have another very big problem because it's very hard to feel socially embarrassed when you're ordering something over a computer and no one's looking at you. So the social embarrassment way of doing the right thing isn't going to work. So we did some research to see what we could do. And I know this is about Australia, but I think the basic principles of shopper behaviour are the same worldwide. The statistics might change. So, very simply, when we ask, a lot of the talk here that I've heard over the last 3 days is about encouraging people to do the right thing, the good thing. Well, it turns out that when you ask people, something like, just reading here, so 73% of Australians won't pay 1 cent more for biodegradable packaging, for any sort of good packaging, recyclable packaging. 73% won't pay a cent more for it. So let's forget that. So if we were to say, okay, what can we do? Just the other point is we looked at, so what does, if they won't pay any more, how much do they have to pay less before they'll just give up their morals, where they'll give up doing the right thing? Anyone want to make a guess of what the discount has to be before I'll go with a cheap and nasty packaging rather than the good packaging? Anyone say 50%? I'd need a 50% discount before I'd abandon my morals?
I think it's much less than that.
Anyone? Less?
Less than that.
Yeah.
Less than that.
It's 25%. Right? It's only got to be 25% cheaper. And we'll go, morals, who cares? Dead whales, who cares? I don't care. I've got it 25% cheaper. That's fantastic. Here's the bad news. In e-commerce, do you know what the average discount is of the recommended retail price? The average discount is 25%. Of everything bought on e-commerce in Australia, it is usually, and that's why people buy it off e-commerce, because it's cheaper. So that e-commerce has a big problem in trying to get people to do the right thing. So what are we going to do? A couple of solutions. So there are a few things we can do. One that I haven't heard any talk about here over this conference is a concept called click and collect. Is that a phrase used here in Asia for where you order something online and you pick it up from the store? Yeah, is that what we call it here? Click and collect? Yeah, okay. So, again, using the example in Australia, 77% of shoppers love it. And 77% expect it, 55% actually like it, only 15% do it because it's awkward, because the stores aren't set up to actually make it easy. You can't just walk into a store, go to a locker, put in your PIN and pick it up and walk out. You have to go to the back of the store, stand in line in customer service, muck around, so it's not very easy. But the very first thing, we could get half of shoppers in Australia not using any of that transport packaging waste if we encouraged click and collect. And here's the really crazy thing. Retailers love it when shoppers come back into their store because they can sell them more things. They can put the chocolate, the candy bar right next to the checkout and they buy another one. But it's all about changing that behaviour for retailers. And if you ask me how to do that, I know how to do that. It's to take a case study from Walmart or Marks and Spencer's and show that some other retailer, respected retailer, has increased their profits, and suddenly every retailer will do it. The average retailer runs on a 3% profit margin. Have we got any retailers in the room who make more profit than that? No, they're probably running an illegal business if they are. So any little profit makes a difference to a retailer, but all you need to do is show them a case study and do it. Just telling them it'll work, they won't do it. Because if they waste any of their 3% margin trying to do something that won't work, they'll be in trouble with their shareholders. Okay, so that's number one. There's two things you can do. 12% of items that are bought on e-commerce are returned. They were the wrong size, the wrong colour, I didn't like it.
Yep.
But in Australia, 80% of people have bought new packaging to be able to return the item because the packaging that they were given wasn't suitable for resealing and repackaging. Does anyone buy from ASOS here? No. ASOS, A-S-O-S? Okay, there's clearly not enough young women in the room. Yes, excellent. Steph, I suspect you might have.
I just hate shopping in general, always have. But this I bought about 10 years ago from ASOS.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And you'd know, if anyone does buy from ASOS, they've been incredibly successful in designing packaging that you can instantly seal and send back. Okay. Again,
Mark, can I ask you to
wrap up?
Yes, please, if I may.
Sorry, I get excited. The last thing that we can do very quickly is about horror. If we can horrify people with the effects, lots of those terrible photos, and I'm shocked and upset by them, of animals dying, it'll work. In Australia, it worked very well with eggs, and it made a difference. So, enough from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. Okay.
42% said they know a lot about plastic.
They claim to.
Yeah, I was going to say, why did you believe them? Because most people don't.
No, if I may, I completely agree. I mean, I know people lie all the time, but it's about what they believe they know. They believe. And I'm sure they've seen, I keep referring to it, but the terrible graphic images of all sorts of sea life and pollution. So they believe it.
Okay. All right. Giuseppe, would you mind providing your insights on closing the loop for packaging, recycling and e-commerce? I'm sure that you've heard the possible partnerships and the emphasis on partnerships through this conference, and I wondered whether you want to speak more about that.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks a lot for inviting us to share the European Union experience. I find that we have a long and quite diverse and articulated experience in dealing with these kind of issues. I'm very happy because I heard circular economy already mentioned several times, and actually this is one of our key concepts. It was launched by the current European Commission. We have a circular economy action plan. which I think is very important because it stresses the fact that all the phases of a product must be involved, must be included. Production, consumption, several different groups, stakeholders, consumers, producers, NGOs, kind of ordinary people, etc. It's really, the issue must be tackled on the basis of a comprehensive approach. And this is what we really try to push as much as possible in the European Union. Now, I fully agree that plastic per se is not to be blamed. It's behaviors. We try to change behaviors at the European Union level, for instance, through education, but perhaps more importantly also through legislation. So this is, for instance, what we have done by adopting recently the Single-Use Directive,
Yes.
which is planning to ban completely some single-use plastic items, simply because, I mean, there are better and more sustainable alternatives for these items. This is not again, not to put the blame on some specific items or products, but because we believe that there's an alternative, so at that point it is useful and indispensable to use this alternative. Another point I wanted to make is that circular economy is for us a very important concept because it makes the social and economic system fit and capable to use fully the value of the materials that we produce for as long as possible. Here, I mean, colleagues have already stressed several times the environmental impact, the negative social, health-related impact, but I would like to also to highlight that there is a very important economic dimension to that. When we throw away a plastic bottle, it is also an economic loss. So we must try and make full use of all the materials, all the products that we have, because it also makes sense from an economic point of view. And this is what we have been trying to support and encourage in the European Union. Even though, of course, we are aware that this is a major change, but this kind of overall system changes require time. But we have to move forward, and I'm very happy to stress that this has been a long-standing commitment of the European Union, and the next European Commission, which is due to take office in a few days, has already announced, the President-designate of the European Commission incoming, has already identified a Green Deal, increased attention to circular economy as one of the 3 major priorities of the next Commission. So over the next 5 years, you can expect the efforts and the political attention paid by the European Union to these issues even to increase. Sorry, this is the first point. Domestically, in the European Union, which is the biggest and richest single market in the world, 500 million consumers, so this is very important also because whenever partners, traders from outside the European Union want to have dealings with us, they have to comply with our standards. So the European Union is also sort of global standard setters when it comes to these issues. But it's also very important to stress another dimension, is the external dimension, the attention that we pay to these issues in our relations with our countries. I'm here posted in Thailand, and we have, I would say, almost on a daily basis, discussions with the Royal Thai government on plastics, how to address sustainability issues, implementation of SDGs, and also with ASEAN at the regional level. European Union and ASEAN have been long-standing partners for 42 years now, and sustainability, environmental attention has become one of the pillars of our relations with ASEAN, both at the political level and also by the implementation, through the implementation of concrete programs. We launched one yesterday in Asia. We have another big program addressing sustainable consumption and production patterns in Asia, in 19 Asian countries. So it's really a daily effort that we also try to export, let's say.
Yes. Thank you very much indeed. We started quite late, and I'm going to segue straight into the next session. There isn't a break between this session and the next one, I believe. So, and I'm just a bit worried that people are flagging. I do understand that there's a question, so I will take just 3 questions, I think, I'm afraid, one after another. One after another, is that all right? Yes, and then we'll wrap it up. I'll get answers and then we'll wrap it up. If I can ask everyone to speak quite smartly, concisely. Thank you. Go ahead.
I will try smartly and concisely. Mr. Jones, from Indorama's side, you made an analogy to explain how the use of plastics, you likened it to cars, and would you blame steel makers and would you blame the car itself for the number of accidents? But I would postulate another analogy. How about looking at plastics, something like cigarettes or smoking? And if you look at that, would you then consider that education is enough? Because I have kids that are 7 and 10 years old, just by educating them not to use cigarettes, not going to happen. What also needs to happen are important things like prices. The price of a cigarette packet being $1 a pack, it's going to be rampant no matter what level of education. You increase it to $8 or $9 a pack, you see a marked difference. If the price of recycled plastic bags is more expensive than virgin plastic bags, how are you going to reset this trend? How are you going to make an impact? Apart from prices, you also need to look at policy levers. You need to look at behavior change. You need to look at different aspects. So my argument is that it's not really fair to say plastics is similar to cars just because of its use function. It's also the way we use it, how we use it, and looking at, WHO is coming out of the report looking at the health impacts of plastics. Yeah. That's similar to look at vaping. Vaping is another addiction. So let me stop there.
Let's hear for the other 2 questions before we get answers, if you don't mind, because it will be a bit quicker that way. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you. Trish Hyde from the Plastic Circle. My question is an open one to the panel. We talk a lot about PET. What about the other 30,000 plus types and combinations? It's a complex world. I'd like to know a little bit more about the thinking of circular economy versus waste management. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And there's a question just at the back there. I'm afraid that's going to have to be the last one. Oh, we've got 2. Sorry. Go ahead, yes.
Okay, let's not put the, plastics with the cigarettes or the guns, but still if we put with the cars, and if we push the cars, as say the invisible hand of free markets will solve the congestion problems, we can't unless we have regulations. So unless we have a waste management systems in place, we have a take-back systems in place, education alone, awareness alone cannot solve. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
My question to Mark. My name is Amit Jain, and I'm working as a researcher as well as on a number of plastic projects in the region. Australia, besides Japan, and Australia is another country where other countries can take, in the region, can take kind of a learning lessons in initiatives for closing the loop. Now, statistics which you have presented, how do you feel? What are the emerging trends considering closing the loop and versus consumer behavior? Will it take 5 years or 7 years in increasing or decreasing the resource intensity of plastics?
Thank you very much. Can I just ask something? I know everybody wants to ask questions, and I know that you want to say something as well, but I just want to, I'm noticing people are flagging. Can I just ask everyone to stand up for a second? Stand up. Stand up. Everybody stand up. Shake a head bit. I don't know, wiggle your body, do something or other, just because I just feel like everyone's dropping off. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. All right. You're ready for the answers now. No, I don't have time. Sorry. Go ahead. Do you want to take do you want to answer some of the questions?
I mean, if you know the tobacco industry, you know that it's been declining in the West, where education has helped a lot to stop people from smoking, health worries, health concerns. Smoking has gone down a lot in the West, and I put that down to great education, basically advertising, saying that cigarettes kill. Nobody's ever saying that plastic bottles kill. That's a misnomer. So the main thing is, I come from a generation when I was young, we didn't have a refrigerator. We didn't have plastic wrapping for food. And we had to say hello to E. coli. You know, plastic has improved the health and hygiene of many things. And to compare it with cigarettes, which are obviously no positives at all, I think it's the wrong way of looking at it. All I was trying to do with the car analogy was say, you don't blame the car for an accident, you blame the driver. And the same reason you don't blame the plastic for being thrown away. It doesn't throw itself away. We don't stand at the factory gates throwing plastic across the street, I promise you. But we have to understand that we can change people's way of thinking, as they've done in the West for cigarettes. They now understand it's a disgusting habit. My father was a smoker, and on his deathbed he said, I wish I hadn't done this, but it was too late. Nobody's going to say that about plastic bottles, to be honest with you. It's not that much of a serious issue. We are 1% of the plastic industry, 1%. So actually, in terms of our effect, we want to compensate that by building recycling plants. We're actually very keen. Now, you might say governments would be very keen to do this. I know I follow the European Union, the European Commission's words about recycling, and I totally agree with it. But in Thailand, they don't even allow you to recycle a bottle into another bottle. In China, they don't allow you. In India, they don't allow you. The biggest populations in the world don't allow us. We actually do about 30% of our recycled PET production is for food use, meaning for drink bottles. We send it to Australia. We can't use it in Thailand. We ship it to Australia, and they use it because they were educated, as I think was stressed. So I strongly believe that with education, as with cigarettes, you can get people to recycle. I mean, not they recycle, but what I mean is they can separate it into the correct bin. I am part of a foundation, and we offered free trash cans to the tourist area, to the government authorities, local authorities in the tourist area where we have our head office. They said, no, thank you. Number one, we don't have a policy. Number two, it would make the street dirtier. Dirtier. Why? Because Thai people don't put rubbish in the bin. They throw it in the general direction of the bin. It's filthy. So what I'm trying to get across with my analogy is that focus on the fact that plastic has no legs. It does not walk. It flies through the air if it's light, but somebody should be putting it into a bin, and somebody should be collecting it.
All right. Thank you very much. Suksiri, I think, wants to answer one of the questions.
You want to say something?
Oh, yes.
First,
Just to follow, just maybe a little bit of different approach for belief. I think today is a discussion, right? For me, as a converters, one of the converters, we believe plastic is a good material. But in Thailand, plastic has been in the petrochemical industry for 40 years. We never taught or never told government how to manage plastic waste correctly. We don't have the good infrastructure. We don't have a good, from the compostable to our even the collection system, or even in the education, not enough. So I think for me, as an industry, as a business point of view, I see ban plastic as like a breathing an industry, right? As long as we cannot help solving the problems, it's a problem. It's going to breathe. So I think if the industry not going into and try to help in terms of education, make understanding, changing human behavior, we cannot wait 30 years, 20 years, we have to do it now. Otherwise, you talk about breathing, right? So if we see the balance of all type of packaging, glass, metal, wood, paper, plastic, global warming, greenhouse gas. We are quite a good product with recycle. So I think something that's why I think in terms of plastic industry club or we believe that just not education actually, Indorama have done very good job. We also work with, but what we try is we need more partners. Industry alone may not be successfully stop it. We try to stop the plastic in the environment, but also education, promotion, everything is also important. This is point of view.
Thank you.
Right. Well, actually, to help the panelists respond to one of the questions about closing the loop, right? It also, my response also touched upon what Kun Paradon just mentioned in terms of balancing the packaging. It's not just plastic. So the circular economy practices that UNIDO offers, we starting from package design. So to design of green products and to design packaging first, we offer tools for companies, in particular the SMEs, to consider whether what type of materials they need. Do they really need plastic? And if they do, they should be able to use renewable and compostable material. So that's one. And then we also offer, in terms of production, we offer resource efficient and cleaner production. So that's during the production to minimize waste and to create low emission, low footprint products, so meaning the green products as well. And then we offer extended producer responsibility. So that would connect with the brand owners, producers, and the users. So I will just go quickly. Recycling, upcycling, we talked about that the very safe way of recycling. We have very cheap one, which is mechanical recycling, then chemical recycling, and then thermal recycling, which can turn plastic into energy. Then we have detoxification of those toxic plastics. And lastly, we offer safe disposal of the plastic when it really goes to waste. And we offer this as a package. It can be a policy package to the government as well as capacity to the entrepreneurs and SMEs in the region. So let me stop here, but then I also would like to second and then to kind of agree with some of the discussion we have here, in the sense that education may not be enough and active norm changing is needed. And we got one example of active norm changing, which is the oral message that our colleague just mentioned. So that's one type of norm changing. And more importantly, the government regulation. So incentivized tools and disincentivized tools, tax or subsidies, that also comes to pay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Giuseppe, I can see that you wanted to...
Yeah, very briefly, because we're running out of time, but I think that the message that European Union wants to also to convey is that we all agree that it is important to focus on the use that we make of plastics, but still, even in the European Union, we are very far from the recycling targets that we gave ourselves. So whenever possible, we also want to encourage alternative materials, more sustainable solutions for packaging, for plenty of different uses of plastic. And we also try to support as much as possible eco-design and research and innovation applied to this sector, because otherwise, I mean, it all ends up in waste, and the problem will persist and will stay with us for many, many years to come.
Would you mind passing the microphone to Mark just to answer that question from the gentleman earlier?
Sure, and I'll be very quick. I must just make a very strong point, and I'm sorry, Richard, I think you've been misinformed about smoking. I was, as the lady said, I agree with her, I was directly involved in that research. Education had a very small part to play, change behaviour. It was all about making it incredibly expensive to buy cigarettes. So I just want to make that very, very clear about that. Number two, the gentleman at the back asked about trends. I'm very positive about the future, primarily because the so-called Generation Z, the ones who are under 25, they're wonderful people. They're not very consumerist, right? So they just, as a group, they're not very consumerist. And so the positive thing, and the second thing is they love travel, they love experiences. So I'm feeling quite positive as they travel around the world, as they look at the horrendous things we're doing on beaches, and because they don't really care as much about brand new things, they're quite happy, much more happy to recycle. I think the trends over the next 10 years are positive in that sense.
Fantastic.
And sorry to be a rude person from the floor, but as an Australian who knows about our recovery systems, do not look to the West necessarily. Australia, we collect and we bury. What we have done with our plastic is sending it to Asia for Asia to deal with. So I know, Mark, sorry, you've got the trends, and yes, there is optimism, but if you are talking about circular economy, Asia has an opportunity to break the mould that the West is still struggling with. Sorry.
Thank you. And I think a last word from Lakshmi before we move on to the next.
I just want to respond, waste management versus the circular economy. Like other instrument or approach, circular economy alone, it's not the solutions. We need to have a comprehensive, because when we're dealing with environmental impact, it's very site-specific, time-specific, stakeholder-specific. So we need a comprehensive sets of solutions, actually. So, but the important things, all the solutions need to have triple win. Win for economic, win for social, and win for the environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And could we have a round of applause and appreciation for Richard Jones, Suksiri Chansuk, Paradon Chulajata, Lakshmi Dewanti, Giuseppe Busini, and Mark Fletcher. May I ask you to vacate, exit, not pursued by a bear, from the stage. And while you're doing so, may I ask the participants for the next panel to join me on the stage, and to frame the discussion for the next plenary session, we have a video that I think we can play. Thank you. Thanks very much for an excellent video, again framing the discussion that we're about to have. Money, money, money. Solutions to address plastic pollution through finance for innovation and technology. I don't think we have everyone here yet. Aha, nice to have you here. Thank you very much. Very good. Great. Thank you very much. Just a reminder, by the way, before we start on this, can I ask everyone once again if they would take a moment just to fill in our thoughts exercise, for which you will have a link on your Google app. Sorry, on the app, on the conference app, and it's a Google sheet to explain what you can offer and contribute to reduce plastic pollution, but also what your needs are, what you can offer and what your needs are, because this is a exercise we're doing in order to be able to visualize the needs, or to visualize the partnerships, the potential partnerships and synergies, because we've heard a lot of people talk about what they need and what they can offer, but we want to see how we can, what that would actually look like if people participating were able to get in on that. So, oops. Thank you. So as you saw in the video framing the discussion, plastic waste management is costly for local and national governments, and basic solid waste management systems covering collection, transport and sanitary disposal in low-income countries cost $35 per tons at a minimum. Marine plastics pollution costs the world up to $2.5 trillion a year. There's a significant lack of inclusive financing options, investment and technology innovations to mainstream alternative materials to plastic, to improve waste management systems and to generate more circular business opportunities to reduce plastic wastage through the value chain. Now, what I'd like to do, if I can get this going, is introduce our distinguished panelists so that you can get an idea of the different perspectives that we're going to have. Stephen Sikra is from the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, and as he just mentioned to me, also a very small company called Procter & Gamble. So we can go to you, I think, as a technology manager as well, so you have the technical expertise. You can name 5 types of plastic, exactly. You do know a lot about plastic, exactly. Nalini Shekhar is the co-founder of Hasiru Dala, which is an organization that mobilizes waste pickers in India and aims for the inclusion of waste pickers in the informal waste economy. Sharini Shannon Kalayanamir, is that correct? Is a venture partner at Gobi Partners Thailand Fund and the founder of Ikigai Group, a consulting company designed to solve 21st century challenges. And she is currently advising the Thai government, the Ministry of Digital Economy and Society, and the Digital Economic Promotion Agency on its Thailand 4.0 strategy. Great. Casper Durant is the head of Sustainable Packaging and Agriculture and Franchise Technical Director for Coca-Cola Southern and East Africa. He also serves on the board of the South African National Bottled Water Association and previously the Glass Recycling Company. He's also the chairman and founder of PET Bottle Recycling Company, Petco. And you've got some pretty impressive statistics I know that you can share with us about recycling in some parts of South Africa as a result. Finally, Christophe Crepin is the manager for the Environment, Natural Resources and Blue Economy Global Practice, or ENB, for Southeast Asia at the World Bank based in Washington. But he provides technical and strategic guidance to the ENB regional activities and manages a team of professionals with work programs consisting of operational and analytical work related to environmental health, natural resources, green growth, and climate change in East Asia, including, of course, marine plastic. So you directly have this brief. And Christophe, I know that you have to go quite in about 45 minutes. So I wonder if the others would indulge me by allowing Christophe to speak first about the World Bank and its interest, what its activities are when it comes to financing innovation and technology that could limit plastic pollution.
Okay, first, thank you very much for the invite, and it's great to be here with all these partners. So look, first, I mean, why a financial institution and a development bank is on this topic, you know, and maybe we would not have been there a few years ago. So, you know, as you rightly outlined in the introduction, I mean, this plastic pollution, while used to be something not nice and a bit local inconvenience, has turned into a global challenge, something that is turning into a crisis, and we see that as actually a development challenge. And the development challenge is having cost, as you outlined. It is impacting equity. It's impacting also some of the poorest. And that's why we on that topic. So now what do we do and how we go about it? Well, first, in East Asia, we have taken this as one of the key thematic priorities at the same level of climate change over the past year and a half. So we're starting that, and we're in this, you know, for the longer term. But what we are doing is basically taking that not as a parallel business and something new that we're doing separately, but really part of our core country engagement. So what does that mean? That means that as part of our basically three types of instrument, the investment, the policy dialogue, and the policy reform, we basically work at country level, we work at subnational level, we work at sub-regional level, and also a few words later about the ASEAN. So that is really part of our core business model. This is part of our core country partnership strategy. We're taking that as also part of our sectoral engagement in urban, in water, in agriculture, and that's the way we move that forward. Now, in terms of some of the key entry points, and just quickly, and basically four things that have been more or less mentioned today, but just to say that this is the way we see it as well. One is that overall waste cycle, right? We used to look at waste mostly as a kind of municipal service type of things, where we look at it at a case-by-case city level on a kind of willingness to move. And this has really moved now to a broader waste management programs that are led by Ministry of Environment, by the Prime Minister's Office, by the Ministry of Planning, and that basically brings together the full chain, you know, from the leakage to the supply chain. And that's what's new and different, and which means that in terms of institutional counterpart and the type of financing, the volume of financing that's going into this thing, it's quite different. There's also a partnership between the national government and the subnational government in terms of who pays what, and that's the type of financing engineering in which we are. The second bucket is in terms of the incentives. So incentive to influence the consumers and incentives to influence the producers. You know, earlier there was a talk about putting a price on plastic. It's about putting the right policy to guide markets, and that's part of our engagement on policy reform. So we have I mentioned the policy development lending, which is one of our instruments, which focuses on a set of policy reform as part of a policy matrix around the theme. And we discuss circular economy, we have called it green growth as well. So we have more and more of this engagement.
What's that, sorry? Circular economy and
green growth.
Okay.
So there's basically a full agenda of policy reform that is coming there. The third entry point is on financing. Money needs to go there. There needs, at various levels. There needs to be public money on waste management, but also in terms of what we do in the fisheries sector, in the agriculture sector, on the agribusiness, the way we go about urban development, and all that needs money, needs different money, needs incremental money. So financing for the public sector is key. At the subnational level, the provinces or the municipalities do ask for some kind of subsidy from the national level to move to a different type of business model. And then the second is on the private sector side. So we discussed, that was discussed earlier. At the bank, we now are working closely with the IFC, which is the private sector branch of the World Bank, and basically putting together some packages at country level that brings public and private resources. And then the last part, last bucket, for us is the partnership, and this is what we do today.
Yes.
It's part of it, right? And it's partnership in terms of the type of money that we use, and the ProBlue was mentioned this morning. I want to thank Sweden and others for helping us to put that together. But partnership across countries, and this is what we do with ASEAN, trying to help as a third party bring countries together around the plastic agenda, together with others. And that's a partnership also at the country level in terms of having some cross-sector and some cross-partner work. So I will stop there, but the point is that that's a combination of the four buckets, that is basically guiding our work, and that's in particular in East Asia. We are now implementing in more or less all Asian countries, but also in China.
I had no idea that the World Bank was into this, and I'm very cheered and encouraged that you are here and that you're participating in all of this. But from this region and our experiences with financial crises, etc., and with foreign debt, I feel like I want to go to the World Bank and ask you directly, is it a hoop? Is this going to be, with the incorporation of this in World Bank financing, is it a hoop that now that governments of poorer countries must jump through? What are we doing about plastic pollution, as it were, in order to be able to access funds?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you said in your introduction, you mentioned some big figures in terms of the cost, economic cost, not only financial cost of plastic, and that's really huge. And that is part of the discussion that we're having with Ministry of Finance in terms, what's good, moving forward for the economy. But financially, also in the short term, one thing that is clearly a driver in Southeast Asia is, for example, the tourism sector. I mean, it's clear that a number of countries are, and governments are investing in waste because they also want to take care of the tourist sector, which is in expansion. In terms of water resources, we're discussing the Philippines, for example, in the Manila Bay. I mean, we know Manila Water and the large company in charge of water and sanitation in the Metro Manila are actually bearing a cost of all the plastic, going through their system and all of that. So all that is progressively first adding up, and two, being factored in the decision-making process.
So if I can extend that analogy a little bit further, if you don't mind, guys, and please feel free to jump in if you have any questions as well. You talk about Manila Bay. There are many waste pickers like the ones that Nalini works with. Can you explain what the World Bank is doing in terms of financing ways of reducing plastic pollution might affect these very marginalized communities? After all, the World Bank is meant to be alleviating the very poorest, right? The very poorest countries. And how would they be impacted?
Well, there is, for example, the fisheries sector, and there is some of the coastal fisheries that involve some of the poor, coastal livelihood, and it's clear that
kind of $1 a day people.
Yeah, exactly. Then you were discussing Manila Bay. If you look at the, along the Pasig rivers and all of that, all the informal settlement where the poor also are, for example, the impact on plastic on the flooding. What of the thing that we do in Metro Manila, for example, is the flood management. And we know that a lot of the flooding issue is linked to the clogging of the canals and all of that because of the waste and including of plastic. Well, working on that is not only good for flooding, but it's also good for a number of the poorest people that live around. So that's just one example of the type of impact that the plastic pollution is having at different stage on the very short term, and then of course we discuss the longer term in terms of microplastic and others.
It's interesting, actually, isn't it? It's like a different vector through which to see development issues, because I think in the past that would have been seen as a kind of infrastructure issue, right? Water management, drainage. And so it's fascinating to hear that that you're able to look at things in this larger way and in terms of circular economy. I wonder whether we ought to move on. Before I'm really hope that we can get some questions to you. I'm sure there are other people that want to ask questions as well. Nalini, do you want to tell us about what you're doing and how it fits into this context of finance for innovation and technology, because people may not associate waste pickers with those three: finance, technology, innovation.
Yeah. I'm just going to tell story of Hasrudala, so it addressed all three of them.
Okay, how long is it going to take?
No, I'm going to take 10 minutes.
Not
Whatever
10 minutes,
time
5 minutes, 5 minutes.
Okay, let me take 5 minutes. Okay, so the slides can go, but I don't have to speak to the slides. Slides are there.
Okay, great.
So we started organizing waste pickers as a non-profit, and soon realized unless you address their livelihood, they're not going anywhere. So we believe livelihood and social security are two sides of the same coin to support waste pickers. And soon, of course, we had to address the business of waste management. Can you go to the next slide? Next slide, please. So we don't need to get into the details. So while everybody has been talking about the problem, same problem we saw, but also we saw a lot of people engaged in waste picking, and also they're all entrepreneurs. So I really wanted to kind of look at how we can marry the two. And it's not going up. Okay. Can you go to the next? Maybe I'm doing something wrong.
I think you're supposed to print. You're supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking at the opportunity, we worked with the state, the local government, brought in a lot of policy. Next stage, please. And we brought in three kinds of. Everybody talks about money, 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 but whose money is it? Who is supposed to pay for this cost, right? And who will make the money? So we believed totally in the polluter pay principle. So here we put. There are three people we identified who can pay money for this. One is the government, one is actually the producers, the third person is the actual consumer.
Yes.
So all three we have used it, and we created some good practice. The first set of money came from 3,500 waste pickers putting 50 rupees each in as membership. That was our base for our money. So when we started, we imagine in 2010, nobody was paying money for waste. They could just throw the waste outside their apartments. But we had to create a market for our services. So we did, and we said you have to pay 40 rupees, that is like $50 a month. And everybody said, no, 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 we can't pay this much money because we are just throwing outside, so it's cheaper. So we really thought about it and came with a very innovative idea of pricing, where we said, okay, you pay 20 rupees, that is less than quarter of $1. And we said, we'll weigh your wet waste, dry waste, and reject waste. These are the three wastes we will take. You'll pay more for the one which you send it to landfill, less for the one we can recycle. And everybody said yes, but actually the price at the end of the month came to 60 rupees, which is more than what we had said. But people were ready to pay because they saw how the waste was created. Next one. And we came up with a very simple method of segregation, 2 bin 1 bag, which has really worked well. And I can talk about it later if anybody is interested. Go to the next. And we also had 3 services. One is waste management services. Then we had something called event waste management. You know, in the weddings in India is huge. We have a lot of waste coming out of it. So we provide services, and this actually gives a lot of jobs to the waste pickers. Today, we manage a party with 10 people to 18,000. In one of the weddings we managed where 18,000 people came, and we manage marathons with 45,000 people running across different cities of India. And then we looked at aggregation of bottles and paper, wherein actually this was an emotional decision to get into this particular session, because there was a huge crisis during demonetization of the money in the country. So this is completely cash flow, a cash economy. So people came and cried to us and said, come on, please buy it. We don't have any money to eat, and that's how we got into it. While we didn't do very well with this particular business, but what we have done is through Plastic for Change platform, we work with Body Shop. Now we are supplying PET bottle for Body Shop. The lady there, Dolly, today if you go to any Body Shop, retailer shop, you see those stickers, because we really looked at this as another finance where Body Shop gives premium price for getting these bottles. So this is one of the finances we looked at. Next one. And just going to looking at the funding itself, in the beginning the promoters of course put little money, but what we have realized that even the foundation are agnostic of the kind of organization you are. Whether you are a foundation, whether you are a company, doesn't matter. They started supporting us. That's another one. And of course the others are all, the others are all of course social investment. So social investors, impact investors are good, but getting into waste they still worry, but nowadays they are little more open to it. They need to have a patient investor, otherwise you can't do it. But still, out of the next one please, I can show you we have grown quite well. So everybody thinks it's an organization of waste picker, they are not organized, they are not professionalized, but we can show you we have professionalized complete system. Next one. And so today we manage our finances very well. That is what everybody wants us to show.
Yes.
And I can tell you there is no money for many things, but some of the money comes from the service fee. So there should be a service fee from the customer, support from the government for empanelment or any regulatory action they have, and also investment and EPR. So these are the different kinds of things that we have checked out to do it. Next one. Today we are managing waste, more than 60 tons of recyclable waste through the foundation. All that we have done is, go to the next one please, next one, please. So from informal, we have moved it to professionalize their services, formalized, and now they are independent. They are all entrepreneurs. All the entrepreneurs who are franchisees are today filing income tax return.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed, Nalini.
Sorry.
No, you did really well. Thank you for accommodating because of the time restrictions. Casper, do you want to tell us something about the story, your story, especially with Petco, with the numbers that you were telling us a little bit earlier, telling me a little bit earlier, of the collection from single digits in the early 2000s to where are you now?
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's a good opportunity to fill in immediately after this presentation, because it's all about money, and that is what made Petco work. So I'd like to share the learning with what we've done in South Africa. So I think South Africa have many similarities to ASEAN. So I think there are opportunities in learning from each other, even more than you can learn from the European Union. I'd like to I'd like to share the Petco story just briefly. Is that we started in 2000 already. This is now almost 20 years ago, as the obliged industry. And the obliged industry is the way it was explained, is those that are responsible for putting the plastic on the market in the first place. And the way we define the obliged industry is the resin manufacturer, the converter of the resin, the bottler, the brand owner, and the retail sector and the consumer. So anyone who touches the plastic before it becomes waste is the obliged industry, and we need to rally together to solve the problem. The producer of waste is not the brand owner, it's not the consumer, it's everyone that touches the plastic before it becomes waste. And Petco is an organization that represents that value chain. We have resin manufacturer on the board. In fact, the resin manufacturer's MD of the plant is a board member on the Petco board. The converter is on the board, the retailer, the brand owner, and the converter. They're all members of the Petco board. And the Petco board calculates every year how much money do we need to spend to make the recycling happen. And remember, I say recycling, not collection. People believe that collection is recycling. Collection is not recycling. If you've collected a bottle, you've done half of the job. In South Africa, we recycle every bottle we collect in the country. So we collect 110,000 tons of PET only, and we recycle 110,000 tons of PET in the country.
South Africa recycles 100%.
No, not 100%. So we collect 110 and we recycle 110. We put out on the market 165,000 tons. So our recycling rate is 68%, and we're almost at 70%. We have a target for 70%. We grew from single digits every year, 2 or 3% more than the previous year. We never made big jumps or strides. We never invested huge amounts of capital. We just continuously pushed recycling, and the collection infrastructure grew together with it over a long period. In Africa, we say, if you want to go quick, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. That is why the partnership is so important. I mean, we believe that we have gone far because of our togetherness and the fact that the obliged industry is stuck together over such a long period. Now, we'd like to think that we're at the end of the road. No, we're not. We're about 3/4 of the way there is the way we see it, and we believe in another 5 or so years we'll get to where we need to be. But this is just PET that I'm talking about. Now, PET is one of the many plastics, as you've heard. There's more than 15, not 5. But PET is of particular concern given its value and its visibility when it comes to waste.
Can I ask you to put on your other hat as with Coca-Cola too, and how do you wear both those hats at the same time?
I wear them one at a time.
Right, you know what I mean.
Yes, so I work for the Coca-Cola company in South Africa, and I've been with them 21 years, and I've been with Petco 20 years. So to me, if it wasn't for Coca-Cola, I wouldn't been in the position to put this together with the strength of the company and the way that we can affect partners and get partners together to work on this problem. And I think all big national, international companies or multinational companies have that opportunity, and they should use it. So I was, let's say, very fortunate in that I could play both those roles.
I wonder whether you work at all with organizations like Nalini's, because I would imagine that there's something like that. I don't know very much about South Africa.
Yeah, many. So we have many cooperatives. I mean, I heard the number of 60 tons. Many of these small SMMEs and collection organizations benefit from Petco's work. So in brief, Petco mainly supports recycling financially, and this is the money cycle. Maybe I can just talk about that briefly, and then I'll talk about what is category B. So category A is when the obliged industry calculates a voluntary industry fee that we need in order to make recycling financially viable in the country. So what we do is we calculate the fee, let it be, and I heard the number of $35 per ton as a minimum. So our number is around 40, 42 at the moment, and it goes up as the recycling number goes up. That is the fee that we charge the obliged industry. So anyone who buys resin in the country has to pay $42 to Petco. So Petco takes that money and contract recyclers to buy the material in the country. So the recyclers then have funding to pay more than the value of PET. And we then effectively support collection organizations financially, because when you go to the recycling plant, instead of them giving you $1 a kilo, they will give you $2 a kilo. And suddenly your finances work and your business works. So not only do we financially support the value chain, and we flex that number every quarter because the situation on the market changes, And as a result, we change that number and we manage that value chain. And then we support the collectors with what I call the tools of the trade. We buy them scales, we buy them trolleys, we buy them compactors, we buy them trailers, and we buy them what they need as tools of the trade. We don't get involved in collection per se. We leave it up to the informal sector to develop the collection, but we help them with the tools of the trade.
And is that calculated into the number that you said you set at the beginning of the year?
Yes, yeah. So the total funds we have, say, is $100 million. We would spend about $20 million on that for Category B, just helping with the tools of the trade, and then we will spend $80 million just in funding recycling to make the value chain work.
It's a really interesting model. Does anyone else do anything like that in the world?
Yeah, it's quite rare, but we've rolled it out. So the PETCO model has been rolled out in Kenya, Ethiopia, Tanzania, and we work on this right throughout the world in a consultative fashion.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for telling us about that, Casper. I wonder whether, Sharini, would you like to tell us about your experiences of addressing plastic pollution here in Thailand?
Okay. So my name is Shannon. I work for Gobi Partners, which is a venture capital. So I'm not here as a plastics expert. I'm not going to pretend to be. I'm a banker. I'm money. I invest.
I'm money.
I invest in projects and companies, and I make money for people who invest in me. But one of the reasons why I am here is because, so Gobi's been around for 18 years. We manage about $1 billion under management. We're in 13 cities, we have 13 funds, and we invest in everything primarily in tech, from e-commerce, logistics, AI, et cetera, consumables, everything. And in the last couple years, what we've recently adopted is our ESG policy. And what we do is we start to look, because a lot of the tech startups that we actually invest in, they actually create a lot of pollution, such as retail, fast fashion, all that other stuff. We also have AI that we're looking at that are doing different types of efficiency that addresses, different ways of making pollution or plastics in this essence, reduce plastics. So for us, using an ESG lens to what we do, one of my difficulties is the E, frankly, is environment. So S for us is inclusion, so social, right, is gender equality. I see Stefan here from Sweden. So, all right, the gender equality. So there's so we have a lot in gender equality, financial equality, economical mobility. We have a lot in healthcare inclusion. We have a lot in the G sector, which is a lot of AI and data transparency. But when it comes to E, the environmental side, we're struggling trying to find good investments because, one, there's a high capital intensity. Frankly, I'm not expert such as many people in this room. I was on Shark Tank last year, and one girl was trying to talk to me about a new biodegradable plate, and it was made out of sugar. And I found out after due diligence that she actually OEM'd it from China, so it wasn't her IP. Mm-hmm. And so for us as a banker, investing in IP is great, but she didn't own the IP. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't have that kind of expertise. Then the second thing, and I was just talking to Tani about this earlier today, then if the sugar canes manufacture at a mass scale, then you're actually depleting the soil, which is actually even worse for environment. And this is news to me, right? Because again, I'm finance, right? I don't know these things. So for me, one of the reasons why I'd like to be here today is because I could share you experiences of the environmental startups that we've looked at, some of the pitfalls that we found, some ways that maybe we could come together in terms of trying to share resources and know-how. And also I could, many people here, maybe not from the finance sector, there are many types of financial investors in the world. So I'm a VC, primarily tech. We invest anywhere from like $300K to $15, $20 million per check size. Then there's PE companies that do more like factories or clean tech or bio. We do some bio as well. And then there's like hedge funds, and there's different types of investors, right? So I think if you want to know more about that, I can share you what the take is. But the main takeaway is we were even exploring starting an ESG specific fund last year, and every investor, like corporate that we were talking to, I won't name names, but they're large corporates that do a lot of pollution. They tear down trees, or they're in rubber, or they're in like whatever it may be, right? But they don't see, they're like, oh, we do CSR, it's fine. And
that's
so
how they offset. They think that they're offsetting.
Exactly.
As it were.
And so for us, the policy is like, yes, we'll still return money. It might just be at a lower yield. Say, the IRR, instead of like 30%, it might be, say, 20. But you're doing something good for the planet as well. So that's kind of what I wanted to maybe share and talk about. And I think one of the reasons why Tony asked me to be here today is to share with you, last year, I mentored a startup called Trash Lucky, who's here today somewhere. He's back there, that's Trash Lucky. And I can share with you more about them later, but what they actually do is, so it's a startup. And basically, it's more of like mindset change, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, like you said, there's the value chain. There's so many different things that you could actually change in terms of this plastic circular economy thing. We're not us, Gobi. We're not the factory type of people. We're not the production type of people. We're more IP or making things efficient. So what they do is they incentivize Thai people, instead of throwing away your plastics, you turn in your plastics for every kilo. They basically married the love of gambling with plastics. So they said, hey, for every 1 kilo of plastics you turn in, I'll give you 2 coupons, and then you could win in cash prize.
But this is an attractive investment.
Correct, exactly. Yeah. And one of the problems, also challenges that we see, is a lot of these environmental ESG entrepreneurs are very social. Yep. So they're self-funding. Anybody want to sponsor, please help them out. But so when they're self-funding, it's slower, right, to get to the mass that you want to create and everything. So that's also another challenge that we see a lot. We see a lot of people who are so social, and I say this in the kindest way, the tree huggers, right? We're so passionate about all of the great things that we should love, in whether it be gender, environment, or whatever, all of us on this side. Then there's the other side, but unfortunately the business sense is not as great. And then we have the capitalist side who don't care. And so that's another challenge that we see. So capacity building is actually one thing that, for us as an investor, we have problems with their execution risk. Trashlick is different. They built a logistics company from scratch before. That's different. But there are not many people that actually have that. I think the other thing is, we also tried looking at the model where we go to universities and science research facilities. The issue is, okay, great, there's an IP now who's going to commercialize it? So when we look to invest in companies, we're not going to do the work. We'll give you the money, but so there's also the execution risk there as well with the commercialization. So again, I'm here to share with you as much as today's agenda is to how to mobilize the solutions for plastic via finance. That's my contribution.
Thank you very much. That's really interesting. And it's wonderful to see how many different perspectives we're getting on this panel. And to close our own loop, as it were, if you don't mind, I'll tell you why. It's just because Christoph is going. And so I'm hoping that if we can do this, and if we can talk to Stephen for 5 minutes, and then we might be able to get a question in that includes everybody on the panel before Christoph has to leave. Is that all right, Stephen? You have been working with innovation throughout your career in Procter & Gamble, haven't you?
Yes.
So does this and you're also the senior advisor on the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. So I'm really interested to hear from your perspective these link-ups between innovation, technology, and finance.
So, first, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. It was quite easy to get into the UN building.
I'm sorry.
4 sets of guards. But let me talk about something important, and I think connecting to all of our panelists, the concept of what I'll call the missing middle. And Shannon, you alluded to it a little bit with your description of a tree hugger. In my world, we look at that as a group that we call evergreens. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, I agree with your analogy. You call them capitalists, I call them nevergreens. And on one end, our population can be broken down into about 10% evergreen and 10% nevergreen. That points out that 80% in the middle that recognizes that huge part of the population that we need to influence to change this problem. Now, if I relate that to dollars, on one hand, we have a little bit of money in the form of grants and small loans that could be available to demonstrate a return on investment. But what we really need to make change at the grand scale where we're looking for is billions of dollars. So on one hand, I will tell you, there's money in the form of $1 and $2 billion available. We'll get to that in a minute. But we need to use that to demonstrate a return on investment. And that's the missing middle. It takes demonstrating that ROI for the missing middle to unlock the big dollars that Gobi brings, that World Bank brings. And if we look at Southeast Asia alone, do we need 50 billion in investment in infrastructure, 75 or 100? It's a significant amount of money. So what does the Alliance to End Plastic Waste offer? If we go to the next slide, what we offer is that seed money to start that demonstration such that we can provide that return on investment. And we have $1.5 billion to invest. That's US dollars to invest. We are looking to invest that across 4 pillars: infrastructure, innovation, not just education, but education and engagement, such that we can inspire and change people's behavior. And then also cleanup, but whenever I mention cleanup, I always like to talk about one thing, and that is doing it one time. Because we could clean over and over and over again, but unless we invest in infrastructure and inspire people to participate in it, that's all we'll do, is clean. So we will invest in cleanups ideally when there's an alternative, and ideally when we can identify the sources upstream so we can stop things at the source. And so what is the Alliance? The Alliance to End Plastic Waste is a new nonprofit organization. We borrowed a fellow by the name of Jacob Dewar from the UN Environment. He is our CEO. He was brought on board October 1st of this year, and he asked me to come and talk and share some thoughts and views on what we're going to do. Now, where does this money come from? If we go to the next slide, it comes from multinational companies. We have 42 members today who are donating, providing not just dollars, but what I call complete stewardship. Stewardship, in my words, is a combination of time, talent, and treasure, bringing the world's leading companies together with engineers, scientists, to understand what innovation might be needed, what novel business models might be required, but importantly, to help understand something that's simplified by a supply-demand equation. So here we have Nalini on the supply side helping collect it. We have Casper, my new friend here, on the Petco side, demonstrating a demand for the material. And when we can collect things properly and find a home for them, then we can help to understand how do we close that gap? The gap between the cost of collection and processing and the value of the material collected. And that's what we hope to demonstrate with the Alliance via our gift of grants and intellectual knowledge, and via on-the-ground solutions and demonstrations with people all across this panel and in this room to show a return on investment. And so this combination of stewardship, time, talent, and treasure against this common cause to do what? To eliminate plastic in the environment. That's what we aim to do. So before, one of the speakers said, I have a horror story. I'm a contrarian. I propose an invitation to join us and hope. There's hope we can do this, right? We have money, we have innovation, we have smart people, and we have people who want to do this. We know how to do this. Rather than throw it away, we pick it up, we demonstrate value, and we reuse things. And so that is what the Alliance is intended to do. This particular group of companies, by the way, are contributing at the CEO level. CEOs are meeting to do this. CEOs have signed the checks. CEOs meet on a regular basis, and they commit their resources and their own time to this common cause. So we're very excited to bring this to you, to share more about it. I encourage you to look at our website, endplasticwaste.org. We certainly can't do this alone. We have to do it in communities, in partnership with others. You'll see our members represent what we call the cross-value chain, from chemical and resin producers to brands and retailers to converters and solid waste companies. What we need, of course, is collaboration with governments, with NGOs, and with communities on the ground. Please look at our website. We have a lot of projects that we've already kicked off. We're just scratching the surface, and we want to work with you. So an invitation of hope is what I provide.
It's absolutely inspiring and brilliant. But there's got to be a downside.
Yeah, the downside is it's hard work, and it's not going to be solved in 3 or 5 years. It's going to take continual commitment from everybody. The good news is we know how to do it.
Absolutely. Some of the companies up there, though, traditional environmentalists, your evergreeners, might look at them and say, aren't those the climate baddies? Aren't they responsible for pollution?
What I would suggest is we all have a role to play. And those who make plastic, those who use plastic, and those who want to reuse plastic represents everybody. And if we can't partner with those, even the groups, Greenpeace, right? Or ExxonMobil or Procter & Gamble or Coke or PepsiCo, we all play a role. We can deny that we want to talk to each other, but we can't deny that we have to work together towards the solution. So yes, we have chemical companies with us, and we're proud to partner with them.
Yes.
And my friend Richard from Indorama will be talking next. We'd like to have you join us as well. There's room here for everybody. If you're across this value chain, we'd invite you to join us as a member. If you're outside of the value chain, we invite you to join us as a supporter. If you have a project that you think is worthy of consideration that can help us demonstrate a return on investment, we would like to hear from you. If you have an innovation idea, an engagement idea, an inspiration idea, submit it to info@endplasticwaste.org.
Or have a chat to you. Have a chat to
Or
you.
have a chat with me. I'll be here after the program. I don't think security will ask me to leave. I also want to share one more thing, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
In my hotel this morning, there was a PET bottle, polyethylene terephthalate. Yes, I'm a geek engineer. I can tell you about intrinsic viscosity, but you don't care. You might ask, why did I bring a plastic bottle? I brought it up here to reuse it. It was given to me. I refilled it. I hope to reuse it again, maybe 20 more times, and then maybe I'll give it to Casper to recycle.
Give it to Nalini first, so that she can then she can give it. Thanks very much indeed to our panelists. We have. Do you mind? I know, Christoph. Do you mind if let's have maybe if we can ask for a question from the audience that might be something that people want to pose to Christoph before he goes, because he literally has to go in like 5 minutes. Yes, I can see a question. Whew.
Hi, Mr. Sikra. I wanted to know actually if you could share concrete examples of
Benedict, could you explain who you are?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Manon. I'm French. I co-founded Enough Plastic, which is a consulting company to design. Oh, sorry. The ambition is to accelerate the transition to a world without plastic waste. So I think we're all in this together. And I just wanted to know if you could share more specific projects or companies that the Alliance to End Plastic Waste has already invested in at the moment.
Was there anything that that anybody wanted to address to Christophe before he goes? Because he has to go quite soon. Yes?
Okay, World Bank historically has a lot of science.
I can't hear you very well, sorry.
Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay, World Bank has historically a lot of science before the investments, like waste management, if you look from the 80s, water, and so on. On plastics, so far I haven't seen a lot of science from the World Bank before the investments go there.
Thanks very much indeed. Would you mind, Christophe, answering that before we turn to Stephen?
Yeah, just a quick, well, we actually started in all or most countries in the region some analytics, linked to plastic. But in parallel, since action is also to take place quickly, we're also moving with some investment, particularly in the kind of low-hanging fruit of waste and solid waste management. So we actually have quite a bit of analytics going on in terms of the type of plastics, where they come from, working on value chain and all of that. And I guess that the most advanced, is part of the work. The most advanced is in Indonesia, and you will see much more of that in the coming years. We do have earmarked resources, and it's part of our engagement to strengthen, increase the analytics in that sector. So clearly, at the same level as the other type of investment and engagement in other sectors, as I said, we put that at the same level of importance, including for the analytics.
It's 3:30, which was when we were initially supposed to wrap things up to go to a coffee break. But as you know, we started late. So I'd like to go for another 10 minutes with your indulgence. And we will go to coffee break at 15:40. Christophe, do you need to leave already? Are you all right? 10 minutes is okay? 5 minutes, okay. Just slide off quietly. I know, I understand. It's absolutely fine. Stephen, do you want to take the question that came in from Manon?
I will. Thank you very much. Just to play it back to you, you look for some examples of investments we've made to date or different projects that we may have kicked off. Is that right? Okay, thank you. So one of the projects that's well underway is with Renew Oceans. It's a project that we're working along the Ganges River in India, where a woman by the name of Priyanka, a young entrepreneur, is working with different villagers and communities along the Ganges River to collect waste, to process it, and to provide new jobs. Now there's a dual benefit here. It not only helps clean up the river, which is essential, it stops the flow into the ocean, but it gives women good jobs. And when women have jobs, kids tend to stay in school, and so we see multiple benefits. That's just one. I'd encourage you to look at that. Another project that we have is some good work in Indonesia. Christophe, you had mentioned that. So you may be familiar with some programs called STOP with some partner companies. We have invested in what we call STOP 3 in Indonesia, in Jembrana, and we've worked with the communities there to kick off a very good holistic program such that we can collect the waste, process the waste, and reclaim the valuable materials. And in that regard, we're making good use of what we call the waste management hierarchy. Hopefully this is not a new term. Many people ought to be aware of that. Right? It talks about what's the impact of your end-of-life solution on the environment, certainly following reduce, reuse, recycle, and then energy recovery, and then landfill. Years ago, I would tell you with my Western perspective, I would like to avoid a landfill. Now, I maintain that, but what I also maintain is a landfill, particularly when well managed, is a whole lot better than litter. Now, we do need to move up that waste management hierarchy, so if indeed some of the outputs of Jembrana would go into a landfill, we would also look at that as a bridging solution, something that might be quite necessary now. It's the tourniquet, if you will, to stop the bleeding until we can move it up that hierarchy, work to extract the good recyclable materials, and put them back into a more circular economy. one more and then I'll close, and that is, we've also have a partnership with a group called Circulate Capital and the Second Muse. And with them, we have provided some funding. Sorry, that sounds like my phone. It'll stop soon. So with Circulate Capital and the Second Muse, we have a relationship that we're providing grant funding to them. So we've provided them $10 million over 3 years, so 10 divided by 3, to help incubate small startups in South and Southeast Asia, with the intention that we can come by with our funding later and make more substantial investments to do what? To demonstrate a return on investment, so we can knock on the door of Shannon, for example, and say, we think there's an opportunity for payback. We're also willing to enter into what we would call a second position on a loan, because we can do the technical vetting. We can vet it with some finance experts like yourself and say, we think there's payback, so please invest with us. But we're willing to take that risk because we vetted it technically, and hopefully that will start to unlock some of the needed dollars in this investment space. Thanks for the coaching to lower this as well.
One of the things I really enjoyed about the panel, one of the panels we had earlier, was there was a bit of interaction. I wonder whether any of the other panelists would like to ask a question. I thought, yes.
The whole struggle we had as an organization is your comment on tree huggers. We are tree huggers, but we are also financially extremely responsible. You saw our slides, right? So that is the assumptions we are getting from most of the funders. So what has happened to our organization is there are a lot of passionate people in IT industry who have left and joined us. You know, we are seeing this movement a lot now. A lot of people, extremely financially intellectuals, are moving into our sector. So this sector has to be seen much more broadly. And if you see any of our books and how we have managed, you will see like any other IT industry, we have managed it at a much lower. I mean, we have grown to 1.1 million in 4 years, which is a big thing. So I want the investors to be a little more open and go and understand. Definitely there is a capacity building issue for sure for people like us. But I think this kind of people, talent that this sector is attracting will answer all the concerns you have. I just wanted to share that.
Casper, did you want to?
Yeah, just a comment on funding, and specifically big funding like my new friend proposes here. So I'm a firm believer that the obliged industry must do the funding. So if you make money out of putting plastics out in the environment, you should be funding the recovery of that. That is your extended producer responsibility. In my view, that is the only real sustainable long-term funding model. Yes, there is a place for funding as is provided by companies as I'm surrounded by to do startups, to kickstart. In many of these initiatives need to get over the first hill, and from then on it can work. So in that sense, yes, there's a place for it. But for me, collection and recycling of your material should not be CSI or social responsibility. It should be part of the work you do. You make money from plastic, you must recover it from the environment. You shouldn't expect a handout from someone.
We have another question.
Thank you. This is directed to Stephen Sikra. A lot of the conversations this whole week has been about plastics, but also in the context of a circular economy. And looking at another analogy, when you have a bathtub overflowing with water, you don't just run to get a towel to soak up the excess water, you also first turn off the tap. So where you sit on the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, are you also investing in efforts to use more recycled plastics to replace virgin plastics?
Absolutely.
In what way? Can you give an example?
I can speak on behalf of Procter & Gamble as a member company. And at Procter & Gamble, we've been using recycled plastic, and not just recycled, but post-consumer recycled plastic, which I think is an important distinction. And let me just spend a moment on that. Recycled plastic within an industrial situation is taken care of most of the time. You know, as producers, we see great value in that, and we're not going to let it go to waste. And so most bottles that are produced will use some of their own regrind material back in that production process. But what I'm talking about is post-consumer plastic, that plastic that helps create this supply-demand equation such that we can then start to change the consumer behavior. At Procter & Gamble, I'm proud to say, we've been using post-consumer recycled plastic for over 32 years. Now, that's not nearly enough. We need to continue to do that. But why do I say 32 years? Because when we talk about a consistent supply chain, it requires year-on-year commitments. And so within my company, and I know Coca-Cola's the same way, or PepsiCo, or other big brand owners, any one of them would tell you these multinational companies have made commitments not only to use more recycled plastic, but to reduce their plastic usage overall. And I'll close with this, and that is, at Procter & Gamble, we made a commitment to reduce our total use of virgin petroleum plastic by 50% by the year 2030.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I think we have, I actually said that we were going to close in 1 minute, but I do really appreciate the interest from the audience, so maybe, is that all right? I'll take, you have an ask. Okay, do you want to do that? And then we'll get a question. Thank you.
So, as mentioned, my ask, actually, to this forum, since there's a lot of people here, what I understand is we're trying to get more financing to help solve this problem, whether it be reuse, recycle, like circular economy, everything, right? The environment. My ask is, like you just mentioned, so our difficulty is, one, the vetting side. So that's one part, which is the expertise. Then two, the actual companies, of all the companies we've seen, not many are financially responsible. and so many of them are, what our lacking is, there's on the science and the technology side in terms of the IP, and then there's the other side, which is more, the financial prudence and also the execution risk in terms of managing their company and whatnot. But because we see so much money actually trying to help this region, this Asia specifically, right? I mean, Thailand's number 5 on most polluters or whatever. And actually, next month, I'm having a meeting with a large Middle East company with 300 billion looking for PE companies doing clean energy, and I don't even know where to begin for them and that one they're looking for factories, solar panels, like anything in terms of the environment. They actually have a large spectrum, but they specifically said plastics. So, I think maybe, as a takeaway from this forum, it'd also be nice if somebody categorized, who does what, right? Because for me, there's the money on one side, there's the technical on one side, there's the deal flow.
That seems to be one of the real solutions that is coming out.
And then capacity building as well. I think that's the thing. Yeah. So that's my ask, basically.
All right, we have one last question.
All right, thank you. I'd just like to say, as an evergreen, our greatest and first partners, Coca-Cola, LDB, we're very proud to be working with them. And my question to you is, PET's got the highest value as a recyclable plastic. Can you tell me any initiatives that are happening in regard to multi-laminates, soft plastics, and other soft plastics that are, the more environmentally damaging ones?
Maybe I could start with polypropylene and innovation that just became available, and Casper, I'm sure you'll talk about PET depolymerization, if I could set you up, okay? So within Procter & Gamble, we use polypropylene more than any other commodity resin. And the vast majority of that is for absorbent hygiene products for babies, adults, and feminine hygiene.
What product would I see that is packaged with that?
A diaper.
Okay.
So a diaper is made out of non-woven, including polypropylene, absorbent hygiene articles in the feminine care area. That takes up about 80% of our use of polypropylene, and 20% of the remaining use of our polypropylene is in packaging caps and spouts and closures and sprayers and so forth. Now, we've been pretty effective at trying to gather the polypropylene back, and the engineers and geek scientists in a room like myself will tell you there's many different types of polypropylene, right? Nonetheless, when you mix it all together, the colors change to gray to black. And it's very difficult to put gray and black recycled content back into a package that's quite appealing, not to mention the hygiene requirements and so forth that we must entail. So there's an innovation that was just developed within Procter & Gamble, and my intent is not to make this an advertisement for anybody, because many companies have made great investments in innovation in this space, but nonetheless, there's a solvent-based extraction filtration technology that can remove, solvent-based extraction filtration, thank you. I told you I was a geek. It's a mechanism that will enable you to put the quality of your polymer back to near virgin level so you can use it again. And so we've talked a little bit about collection, the separation and the processing as we want to use more of these types of materials away from the rigid bottles, whether it's PET or polyethylene, but getting into the polypropylenes or the mixed material flexible films, the multi-layer, multi-material laminates. It's going to take these types of advanced technologies to do the separation and to provide the material at the quality that is needed and expected for brand owners and others to use this in a safe and hygienic way. And so that's the type of innovation that we're going to see, not just on the technical side, but on the business model side as well. We need those types of innovations. We need to incentivize, as Casper said. We also need some good supportive policy to make these things happen. And so there is no silver bullet, but innovation is indeed one of the requirements, and you'll see more and more of that coming.
I'm going to wrap things up, if that's all right. No problem. I have been so inspired by this conversation. I really enjoyed the fact that we had solutions and recommendations from every single one of you, but that every single one of you also said it's not possible to do it on your own, and that everyone needs to be involved. And I really have got to hand it to Stephen for his invitation for everybody to get involved in his initiative, their initiative. It sounds marvelous and it sounds very big in scale, and also to keep engaged with this initiative, Sea of Solutions, because we too want to be able to continue to initiate these kind of partnerships. And with that, I'll hand it over to you for the coffee break.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for joining us, and to everybody who was patient enough this afternoon and engaged and asked very, very thoughtful questions. Before we go to coffee break, I am told that we have an exciting announcement that will be made. Can I please invite Mr. Nguyen Kilam, the Deputy Director General of the Vietnam Administration of Seas and Islands. We've got an excellent opportunity on our hands, so, sir, why don't I?
Please, yes. It's up to you. So if you want to stand there or here, or you want to stand
yes.
at the front here.
Yes.
Okay.
Her Excellency, the Regional Director and Representative for Asia and the Pacific Office of the UN Environment Programme, Madam Deccan Shering. Who's Madam? Yes, hello, Madam. Distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a great pleasure to attend this Sea of Solution 2019. And I would like to express my appreciation to the UN Environment Programme and COP-C Secretariat for the preparation for this event. Vietnam recognized the importance of the strategic and direction in providing a framework and guidance to participating countries in marine and coastal environment in the next 5 years. Understanding the effort made in developing the new strategic direction, Vietnam ensures that it reflects the needs of participating countries in achieving SDG 40 and related targets. Vietnam noticed that the issues relate to the sea and island, which are being handled by Vietnam Administration of Sea and Island under the Ministry of Natural Resource and Environment, are greatly important to the country. Having the strategic direction of COP-C, Vietnam could focus on the implementation phase and the issues related to marine litter and microplastic. In this regard, Vietnam looks forward to COP-C Regional Action Plan on marine litter, which would become useful instrument to support the countries in preventing and mitigating marine litter through information sharing and capacity building efforts. Vietnam also emphasized the importance of ecosystem-based approach in managing MPA and protecting marine and coastal resources, which is essential for achieving sustainable ocean economy. Vietnam welcomes the continued support provided by the UN Environment Programme in implementing the COP-C strategic directions and regional project entitled Reducing Marine Litter by Addressing the Management of Plastic Value Chains in Southeast Asia. Recognizing that regional cooperation in addressing the challenges which affect the marine environment in the region is essential for the effective implementation for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its Sustainable Development Goals, particularly the Goal 14. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish the Sea of Solution 2014 will produce positive result. And by this chance, I would like to announce that the Sea of Solution 2020 will be organized in Vietnam. And we look forward to welcome you all there. And wish you all good health, happiness, and success. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Nguyen. I think this has been a wonderful surprise, I think, for many of us, but also really promising given that the journey of Sea of Solutions has culminated here. So before our closing session called Voices, which is going to be a really interesting, engaging, and inspiring session where we hear from everybody who's been around today and over the last few days, may we all take a quick coffee break. I can see there's been, this has been building for a while, so we will have you back here maybe around 4:15. I know that's short time. And may I please request all the speakers for the Voices session to come up front and take these seats. We'll see you back here in 15 minutes. Thank you.
You are amazing. 4 sessions you took today. You just got one to go. Amazing. Did you want to take pictures? Oh, same here. I want to give you a shout and good luck with the project. I'm working with researchers. Yes, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
How do I get in touch with everyone?